Good afternoon, fellow Toastmasters. It's great to see everybody. How do we take what we learn here to the next level and out into our work lives? I put a packet in front of you. It's not very well labeled. It just says a plain agenda on front, and you'll have to share. It's upside down in front of most of you. Carl's got it there. So share, carry, yours is underneath your glasses. And don't flip the page, just stay on the first page for now. And so I'm going to give you some tricks from my experience. So how many of you guys have been to a meeting where there's been no agenda? Just about everybody. And has that meeting been very successful? Sometimes it can be if somebody steps up and takes control and follows something in their mind, but sometimes it's not. I was just at a meeting yesterday where we all came together, we had no agenda, it was all leadership trying to decide on something, and we went through that jockeying. Nobody really wants to take control of the meeting because then you're going to have to do all the work. It was not a very productive meeting. How many of those meetings that you go to that don't have agendas typically end up having another meeting scheduled to figure out what to do? Yeah. A lot of times, well, we'll have something we need to work on, we'll be talking with our colleagues and say, oh yeah, we need to get a meeting on this to discuss this. But unless somebody takes control and says, these are the things we need to talk about and these are the outcomes we're looking for, that meeting is very likely not going to be successful. So I put the first agenda here. It's this plain agenda in front. And it actually looks like a pretty good agenda. It's got times, it's got topics. This is from an actual meeting that I ran. It's a day-long meeting that I ran back in May. So it's not too bad. But what do you see does anybody see what's missing? The primary thing that's missing from this agenda, and you may not see it because we don't put it on ours.
Purpose, outcome.
Yeah, purpose and outcomes. If you flip to the next page, you'll see the actual agenda that I sent out to everybody. It has a picture, so it's a little bit more entertaining. But on the top there, it has purpose and objectives of the meeting. This is key. So you start with your agenda and you build from that. And the reason that I start with the plain agenda is because this is a trick that I've learned the hard way over time. This is a real good shortcut to planning your meetings. First you figure out what your goal and your purpose is. And then what are the different pieces that are going to allow you to get to that. In my case, the goal was participants understand the scope and depth of the Hester Marsh project, and the participants have the opportunity to share and hear what others are working on. That's pretty simple for a full day meeting. It means we want people to understand the project, and we want them to talk to each other and network. And so you set the meeting up accordingly. Now there's a lot of details in that first piece. We want them to understand the science, we want them to understand the scope of everything and how it's all going to look, but we also save time for partner updates, which is that integrated piece. So the next part of, once you've defined your purpose and your objectives of your meeting, you can figure out what are the different elements I need to put into that meeting in order to achieve that goal. That's what we have here in the agenda. And then once you have that together, you know who you need to invite, who needs to be there, who needs to hear the information, or who needs to give you the information that you want. So this could be pared down to a couple-hour meeting, a 1-hour meeting. This can be pared down to a 15-minute stand-up. It's who needs to be there and what information do they have. And then, now, contrary to what Tatiana said, where you had no choice as to what the purpose of the meeting is, all of my meetings, my attendees have a choice. They get the agenda a week early. They review it, and they let me know, is there something missing? Is there something they don't want to talk about? Are there people that I haven't invited? Is there something that needs to be different? We want this to be the most productive meeting that it can be, because most of the time, when we have meetings, it's an informative meeting or it's a meeting where you need to remove roadblocks and move something forward. So you have to have the right people with the right information. And they need to be prepared. So they have to have the agenda, they have to know if they're speaking, and they also have to know if they're bringing critical information. So bringing it back to Toastmasters, our Toastmaster will reach out to each of the speakers so that they know what they're talking about, what their introduction is, and if they have any technology requirements, so that it all fits together seamlessly. You get lots of practice doing that. And so he goes early, so I'm just checking to see if there's anything else. Okay, so let's flip the page, because this for me is the key. The next piece of this is to take your initial agenda and make what I call a facilitation agenda. And this is what I carry, this is what I hold in my hand throughout the meeting. And it tells me what I need to keep track of. And if there's certain things, like on the beginning, I'll have to go, always have the meeting goals, but I'll have this first part I always get stuck on. It's how do I want to open the meeting? And often I'll open it with an icebreaker. In this case, what I did is I put a penny in front of everybody, and as they went around and introduced themselves, I had them read the date on their penny and say one thing that happened in their life during that year of that penny, which is always brings up some interesting things. But it's a nice way to break the ice and get everybody in the same place. Yeah, I usually go through and try and cull the early ones out. And what's unique about this one is that it has much more detail on everybody that's speaking, and it has times down to 2 minutes. If I have a speaker that's going to be up there for 2 minutes, they get 2 minutes, and then I'm reminded 2 minutes you've got to do. That's all you've got to do. And this is very, very useful. It follows the format of the agenda, but it has those extra details where, especially like if I have a round robin and that says, okay, remember, Carl tends to speak a lot. Remember to cut him off after 2 minutes. That will be written on this agenda so that I'll remember. Or I know that Tatiana is working on a really interesting project. Remember to ask her about it. It goes into that section of the facilitation agenda. And then the last part is, if you go all the way to the smallest piece, small print here, that's a checklist. And that will help you from all those things of setting up a room, getting the right technology, telling the people what they need to do, identifying all the roles. So it's who's doing what when. Looks like I might have stapled this together wrong, but the first page is preparation for hosting the meeting and identifies all the roles, and then each of the pages after that, what each of those people are doing when. And that's that recipe for following up and making sure everybody knows what they're doing, even if it's a really simple meeting, getting them to the meeting prepared to discuss what you want them to discuss. Thank you.